May 21, 1991, exactly 28 years ago. Possibly late evening, we left for the old airport, Chennai Meenambakam, where the press conference was to be held, slightly delayed. But then after he came, it was for more than 45 minutes, and the whole range of issues, international, national, and Tamil Nadu as well. A fairly important press conference because according to the opinion polls, he was likely to make a comeback as a Prime Minister in the next few days. So in many ways it was a very, what we call a newsy press conference, and most of the press corps had gone back to the city to find the reports in the press conference. I was with the PTI. I was also assigned to cover the public meeting at Sriperumbudur that was to take place a little later. And immediately after the press conference, Rajiv Gandhi began his journey to Sriperumbudur, and I followed in the press van that was part of the convoy. So I had a problem. I had to file my press conference report. There were no cell phones, nothing digital in those days. So at the first roadside stop at Porur, where Rajiv Gandhi was received by local congressmen. So I took the opportunity to get off the convoy, found a shop nearby. I gave my first report on the press conference, about 200-300 words, and the convoy is about to leave, so I got back to the convoy. And the second stop was at Punamali, again a roadside reception. So again I looked for a phone at the nearby shop, filed another 300-400 words on the press conference, and again jumped back into the convoy. The third halt was Sriperumbudur, of course, where the vehicle entered the ground from the main road, and then he began his walk towards the dais, and we were about 20 feet behind, the press and others walking behind him, and suddenly there was this huge blast at Sriperumbudur, and everyone in front of me is they had fallen to the ground, and there was massive smoke and smell of burning flesh and people dying, and then a whole lot of people rushing past us, including the police, siren vehicles and so on, asking everyone to leave and go back to the main road and not move further. Only a few of us ventured further to look and see what had happened near the site, which turned out to be the blast site, and I could find the body of Rajiv Gandhi there. It was quite obvious, one by the complexion, and second the clothes that he wore, the shoes that he wore, and so on. And I could make out that he was dead, and the IG Raghavan was one of those connected to the security. He was also there along with J.K. Mupnar and Jayanti Natarajan, Congress leaders, and all of them found him dead, and IG Raghavan himself told me that he was dead. So then my problem was, being a professional and being a journalist, I had to file my report for PTI, Press Trust of India, National News Agency, which had links obviously with AP, Reuters, AFP, worldwide, and how to file my report without a cell phone and where to locate a phone was a big problem. Fortunately, I managed to find a local telephone and file my report to Press Trust of India. Of course, done the story how we managed to do it, where I had to tell my sub-editor to file the report while I was waiting on the line, and said, you put it out as a flash. In those days, PTI had for important news, like we have breaking news today with accompanying music. In those days, PTI teleprinters were there stationed all over the world with, and the flash news would be accompanied with the sound, the tingling of a bell to alert the newsroom. So that was what was done. And so I finished that and then got back to the city, and then we went to GH where the body was brought and so on. And then thereafter, a few hours later, went down to the airport where Sonia Gandhi and family had come by a special flight, and these bodies were taken to the airport, and then they flew back with the bodies to Delhi. And for the next 2 days, and in fact for the next 6 to 8 months, we were on the story of the Rajiv assassination, the CBI taking over, and all the subsequent investigative stories. So I and a few other members of PTI, we had to cover the whole gamut of the assassination, right from the SIT team to the daily hearings and so on. Next morning, when we visited Sriperumbudur, the CBI team had come to take over the investigation. And one of the curious things that happened was there's a flurry of activity over a camera which was supposedly recovered by the police and handed over to the Kanchipuram town police station. And there were some people who were attempting to retrieve the camera. One of them, in fact, even said he belonged to the press and needed his camera because he had given it to his friend, to Haribabu, to cover it, and he wanted his camera back. But then the police said it has now become case property, and the CBI has now taken it over. And as it turned out, that camera was the most sensational piece of the whole investigation, because the photos were taken by Haribabu, apparently engaged by the LTTE through a third person to take pictures of the assassination and probably send them back to Sri Lanka. It was said that Prabhakaran used to watch a video coverage or photographs of whatever activities they had undertaken. So probably it was meant for that. This was one theory that was put forward, though it was never 100% confirmed. So Haribabu's photos revealed the people who were standing in the queue, the suicide bomber Danu, another person later identified as Shivarasan, the one-eyed assassin. He was there apparently as a press reporter. These were among the 7 photographs that Haribabu took, and the 8th was a big white flash, because that was a blast, and he died in the explosion. He probably never knew there was going to be a blast, and he was one of the casualties. This camera, when the CBI developed the photos, and they started investigating who were these people, and after a few weeks they found confirmation that the suicide bomber was Danu, and the man standing like a press reporter was Shivarasan, and that led, it was supposed to be a blind case according to the CBI, and they put the pieces together, and then they found that these were active members of the LTTE, and that is how they came to the theory that LTTE was behind the assassination. I did find one vehicle which was following the convoy right from GH. There was a lot of curiosity about the coffins that were there, and obviously Rajiv's body was there, and it turned out there was another coffin next to Rajiv Gandhi's, and these were being got ready to be shifted to Delhi. And then there was this vehicle that followed. I was part of a press team that followed the vehicles carrying these bodies to the airport, and we found one vehicle which was not part of the police or the press convoy, which followed all the way right up to the airport. And my guess was, and there was a talk that perhaps the LTTE thought that Danu's body was among these coffins that were being carried to Delhi, and this was possibly one reason why there was anxiety as to whether they were following to check whether Danu's body was being taken away, or whose bodies were being actually taken away. So maybe there was one way of trying to cross-check who were being carried away to Delhi, and whether Danu was one of them. The curious thing was, we didn't have 24/7 breaking news TV channels like we have today, a plethora of them, so nothing can escape the attention of the media. In those days we had only Doordarshan and All India Radio, and Doordarshan and All India Radio didn't announce the death of Rajiv Gandhi that night, for 2 reasons. One, there was no official confirmation of the death of Rajiv Gandhi until well past midnight, and the second thing was they had a government protocol as to after they get clearances from the INB and then the Home Ministry, only then can they put out news of this kind, especially very sensitive nature as this. So the people in Chennai, though it happened very much in Chennai, were totally unaware of the assassination, and how some of the relatives in Chennai came to know of it from anxious calls from the relatives in the US and Europe, who were wondering if there was rioting in Chennai because of the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi. And the people who were woken up in Chennai around 11:30 in the night, they were quite surprised and shocked to hear that Rajiv Gandhi had been assassinated almost close to Chennai, and they had no way of knowing. So only they got calls from abroad, and abroad what had happened was, incidentally, one of the agency's reports which was quoted was PTI. and radio and television networks across the world broke their transmission, whether it was music or whatever, to announce that former Prime Minister of India had been assassinated, placed near Chennai. So that's how they came to know, much before even people in Chennai. And in Chennai, and as also the rest of India, people came to know the assassination only from the morning newspaper reports. Otherwise, they had no way of knowing. Those are the days of when we didn't have such communication facilities and TV channels as of today, and no cell phones either, or social media for that matter.